Hi.
Alright, hello guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are brand new here, my name is Nikki and this is my book nook. And today we are doing my May reading wrap up. Can we talk about how it's already June? Like, when did that happen? How are we already nearly halfway through 2023? Definitely feels like it just started. It feels like I just did my 2022 yearly wrap up and now we're here. I don't know, time is just flying, but regardless. I had quite the reading month in May. I read 14-ish books. I just kind of went off the rails. I published my latest novel, Something Rad, at the very end of April, April 30th, and I just told myself this month I was taking a break. I just wanted to read. I wanted to knock off some books that had been on my TBR for a while now, so I just was a reading machine, and honestly, it was a bit of a roller coaster of a month. I had quite a few disappointments, especially over books that I was really excited to read. And then I read several books that were, you know, just kind of okay, good, but not mind-blowing. And then I read a couple of books that were absolutely amazing. One that might just be my favorite read of 2023. So we've got a lot to talk about. Let's just get into it. So first up, I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This story follows this woman that is a doctor. She comes from a family of doctors that have been super legendary. They are very big names in the medicine world, especially at this one particular hospital. Just for many generations now, her family has had a name at this hospital. She's really looked up to. Her parents have, you know, a lot of pressure on them, which means a lot of pressure is on her. She has very high expectations set for her, and kind of no matter what she does, it's never enough. Her life has kind of been written for her since she was a child that, you know, she's going to be a doctor. She's going to reproduce more doctors, and that is what her life is supposed to be. And so at the start of the story, this woman basically gets in a car wreck, has some car trouble outside of this very small town, and this man ends up finding her on the side of the road, helping her out, and they end up having this like kind of crazy instant chemistry connection, one night stand. And she is older than him. It's kind of like a reverse age gap. She's about 10 years older than him, in her late 30s. He's in his kind of like mid to late 20s. And yeah, so they have this one night stand and totally hit it off, but she goes back to her life because she just knows, even though she's interested in this guy, there's just simply no way. He doesn't fit in with her. He's like this country boy from this small town that he's lived here his whole life. He's never gonna go anywhere else. He can't ever go anywhere else, and, you know, doesn't have any formal schooling, is kind of like a handyman, like blue collar, you know, gets his hands dirty, and she is from this very like wealthy, rich, posh, you know, snooty group of doctors. And so she kind of tries to go about her life being a doctor, but she can't help but be drawn back to this guy. So she keeps kind of going back to the town. He is head over heels for her. Instant lust, insta love very much in this story. And so he's obsessed with her, but she has to be very secretive because she just knows that he can never be a part of her world. And, you know, you can kind of expect what happens in this story. This book was blowing up. I was seeing it everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. They were just giving it like 5, 6, 7 infinity stars, obsessed with it. I have to say, I didn't really like it. I think that the writing was good, but I just think it's a story that's not for me, because anything in any form that is insta-love, insta-lust, it just doesn't do it for me. And when the couple is like clearly just in love on page 5 and it's just an entire story about them essentially dating, it was just hard for me to not get bored. I also just felt like it was pretty obvious what was going to happen in the story, and I just found the characters to be a little bit frustrating. One thing about this book too is it really focused on abuse, like abuse, domestic abuse, all forms of it really were kind of brought up within, you know, the main character. She has this partner that is abusive to her, but not in the typical way. He's kind of like mentally abusive to her, and then she's got her parents who are like verbally abusive, and then there's this other character in the story that is being physically abused. So it was kind of meant to like show you that there's many forms of abuse, but I just thought it was like a little bit forced, and it was just put into the story for purposes that weren't really necessary. I don't know, just in the end, it didn't come together for me. I can't argue that like the writing was good. It just wasn't my thing, and it just, I don't know, just how I feel. But if you're into small town romance, if you like some insta lust, insta love, sort of vibe, you'll probably like this one. And then next, I read Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I get a lot of book recommendations on my channel. A lot of people message me, leave comments saying, you'll love this book, you have to read this book, please review it. But this might be one of my most highly requested books to read in the history of my channel. So many people over the years have messaged me saying to read it, and finally I did it. I actually met Jennifer Hartman at this author event that I went to. I got this book from her and she signed it, and she was just so sweet, and I knew the time is finally here. I'm reading this book and oh my God, it blew my mind. This is a very dark story, a very heavy story. It's essentially about a girl and her sister's fiance. They've all kind of grown up together, and her and the fiance have never gotten along. They've always kind of picked at each other. He kind of even bullied her a little bit whenever they were growing up, but now her sister is marrying him and there's really nothing she can do about it. And pretty much the two of them end up getting kidnapped together. They're at her sister's birthday party. She stays late at the spa. The fiance ends up having to give her a ride home, much to her dismay, because they cannot stand each other, don't really want to be in close quarters together, but now they are stuck in very close quarters together because they're both chained up in this basement by this crazy man that has kidnapped them and is doing unspeakable things. It is really rough, it is really heavy, every trigger warning in the book that you can possibly imagine, but this story was so beautifully written. It was just paced perfectly. The things that these two people go through that, you know, kind of hate each other, but they're forced to be around each other 24/7, go through the worst things, have to learn to work with each other to try to get out of the situation. And then you kind of see the aftermath of it all, of how they have to kind of acclimate back to the real world. And there's so much to it. I absolutely loved it. Like, it was one of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. I'm going to read everything by Jennifer Hartman because I was just completely blown away by this. If you're into a dark romance, if you're into some twisted, heavy stuff, this one was so good. Okay, this next book I am so excited to talk to you guys about because it is so far my favorite read of 2023. It is A Song of Sin and Salvation by L.H. Blake. I found this book because the cover artist for this book is actually my cover artist for Something Rad. I saw her post this cover and I just instantly fell in love. You might be able to tell from, you know, the imagery that this is an 80s story, just like how Something Rad is an 80s story, and it's also very much inspired by a certain Stranger Things character. If you guys don't know my book Something Rad, the main character, the male main character, is inspired by Steve Harrington, and this story is inspired by Eddie and Chrissy. I've actually since befriended the author. We totally bonded over our love for the 80s, Stranger Things, everything in between, and I was excited to get this arc. I signed up for it, and you know, I figured I was gonna like it, but I had no idea how blown away I was gonna be by it. Like, it's inspired by Eddie and Chrissy's story. For those of you that, you know, your heart broke never getting to see that play out, that one singular scene you get of Eddie and Chrissy in Stranger Things, you just feel like there's more there. These two have this connection. Like, I wish I could have seen more happen with them. This will satisfy you, but obviously this story, it's inspired by that, but it takes on a life of its own, and it is just so good. Literally stabs me in the chest how much I loved it. It pretty much follows this girl that is in high school. She's a high school senior, and she has grown up living her life by the book, literally. Her family is very much religious, involved in this very small town church that they're a part of, and she has been promised to marry this boy since she was a kid. And she likes the boy well enough, but she's never really had, you know, much say in her relationship with him or anything else in her life, and she's never even really thought to question anything until this new boy moves in next door. He literally lives in the bedroom that their windows are facing one another, and he is everything she has been taught to avoid her entire life. He's got long, messy hair. He wears like t-shirts with devil music on it. He listens to rock and roll. He plays loud music. He, you know, is just everything that she's supposed to not be about. But this boy quickly wiggles his way into her life and just makes her question everything. He is just here in this small town to finish his high school, you know, education, get his diploma, and he is planning to book it to California to start his music career. But this girl that lives in the house next to him, she might just sway him away from all of the rules that he has made for himself to keep his eyes laser focused on his goal. He might just break every single one of those rules to help out this girl that is so much in need of help and needs to break free from what she is in her home life. And their story, the two of them, I laughed, I teared up. If you've ever just been a person that, you know, growing up felt like maybe you didn't belong or that you just wanted to break free is all I will say. This story will very much resonate with you. I actually want to read the dedication. It says, "To all the girls who were told they were to blame for the sins of boys and to all the boys who showed them that's bullshit." I loved it. It was so good, so cute. If you like the 80s, if you liked something rad, you will adore this book. Next, I read Meet Me at the Lake by Carly Fortune. This was just about my most highly anticipated read of this entire year. Every Summer After last year was one of my favorite books of the year, one of my favorite books of all time. I still think about it, honestly, weekly. It just pops into my mind. I adored that book, so I was so excited to read this one, and it just missed the mark for me. It's basically a story about this girl that grew up with a single mom that runs this lakeside resort. Kind of think if you've seen Dirty Dancing, it's kind of like Kellerman's, and her whole life she's been expected to take over this resort whenever she grows up, but she's always kind of wanted something more. She ends up going off to college in the city and just realizing that there's so many things out there, and she meets this boy named Will. They kind of have this 24-hour whirlwind relationship romance where he just shows her more of the city, and they just, I don't know, they just instantly click. They have this like total chemistry, and he's kind of the first person that she feels like she can open up to about what she really wants, and they have a lot in common. But long story short, at the end of those 24 hours, they make a promise to each other that they are going to make these goals, and they are gonna, you know, make a checklist, and they're each gonna try and achieve those goals. They're not gonna talk to each other in that year, and then after that year is up, they're going to meet up at her resort and sort of reunite and see what happens. But Will never shows up at the lake. He does not meet her at the lake, and now fast forward, this girl is like nearly 30. Her mother has just passed away tragically, and she is taking over the resort that she never wanted, and she's working the check-in desk, and a very familiar face is checking in. It happens to be this boy, and apparently he now works as a business consultant, and he had promised this girl's mother that he was going to help her out with the resort before she passed away. So now he is here to do that, and they're reuniting. Lots of tension, lots of angst. I felt like it had so much potential. It was very kind of similar to Every Summer After, with all of the summery lake type of vibes, the second chance romance, the past and present timelines, but it just didn't come together for me. I just felt like, I don't know, it was just slow. I didn't really feel much for the characters. Like, there were certain parts, certain lines that just made my heart explode. Like, Carly Fortune does know how to write dialogue like no other. I love her writing, I really do. So there were parts of this book that like I loved, and I kept trying to convince myself that I liked the book, but when it ended, I was wanting more. I felt like I had a lot of questions. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. So yeah, I was really disappointed in this book. I honestly wouldn't even recommend it. Read Every Summer After if you haven't, but yeah, I'll for sure read whatever she puts out next, but I'm hoping this was just like a singular flop, and from here on out, we'll get the writing that I know she can give us, because she's incredible. So next, I read Per My Last Email by Juliana Smith. You guys have probably heard me talk about Juliana Smith once or twice on this channel at least. This is her third book. Her first two I absolutely loved, so I was really excited for this one because it was supposed to be a friends to lovers office romance, kind of inspired by Jim and Pam. I was excited going into it, but honestly, I just think it wasn't for me. I love friends to lovers if it's like a childhood friends to lovers where there's a lot of history there, but this story was just a straight up kind of friends to lovers, and it was very much insta love as well, and it just didn't feel like there was much of a plot to me. You know, these two people have worked together for 3 years now, and whenever they met on this guy's first day, they instantly were obsessed with each other, but the girl kind of overhears him in a conversation, kind of misunderstands what he's saying, thinks that she's not interested in him, so she just gives it up, and then for 3 years now they've been working together. They are best friends, completely obsessed with each other, but no one like will ever make a move. But now they've kind of decided they're ready to make a move, and so they go on this company retreat, and I mean, things just kind of happen between them, and it was cute. I really like Juliana Smith's writing once again, but yeah, I just don't think it was for me. It was just kind of like fluffy, and there just wasn't much conflict and much of a story or a plot to me, so I don't know. It wasn't my favorite, but I really love her other 2 books, and I'm definitely gonna check out whatever she puts out next. Okay, and then next I read The Daydreams by Laura Hankin. I loved this book, and I'm honestly upset that I'm not seeing more people reading it. If you are a fan of Daisy Jones and the Six, if you like that sort of documentary style story, you will love this. I am a massive fan of Daisy Jones and the Six. It's one of my favorite books of all time, and I feel like I've been searching for something like that ever since I read it, and when I heard about this book, I was just like, I have to check it out, and I was not disappointed. It's basically about this group of people that were on this super popular show in the early 2000s. They played high schoolers that were in this band together, and the show just took the world by storm, but it only was on TV for 2 seasons, and at the end of the 2nd season they had this live finale that just went off the rails, was a big scandal. It was all over the media, and now all of the stars of the show, there's 4 of them, they've all kind of like gone their separate ways, and they're all doing different things. One of the actors is now, he's a super famous actor. He's continued to act and just get more famous. The kind of star of the show that was the girl, you know, lead, she has kind of just been a train wreck ever since, in and out of rehab, can't maintain a relationship or really anything else. The other girl really never acted again, but she's married to a famous athlete. And then the 4th girl, who is really the main character, the main sort of narrator of this story, totally just kind of abandoned the acting world. She went to college and she's now a lawyer, and people have always wanted the show to come back together. It still has this cult following, and people want a reunion, and finally it's happening. So we're seeing the 4 of them all come back together and try to put on a reunion show, and there are so many secrets between them, and we're kind of slowly seeing the past play out, see like the show start and then rise to fame, and then see what ultimately kind of made them break apart and made the season finale go so bad. And you're seeing the one girl's point of view, but you're also kind of seeing everybody's points of view at different points. I just thought the way that it was told was so interesting, and I don't know, I just love this kind of concept just about famous people where it just feels really real and really relatable. I really loved it. I thought it was great, and I think more people should be talking about it. Okay, next, I read the book that I think everybody and their mother read in the month of May, Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I'm not going to talk about this too much because I made an entire reading vlog on it, so if you want to go on my journey of reading this book, you can go and watch that video. But this is a fantasy story that reminded me a whole lot of Divergent, with like a little sprinkle of Hunger Games, and add in a bunch of dragons. There's basically this society, this continent that's been at war, and when all the kids come of age, when they turn 20, they have to pick one of 4 quadrants to go into, you know, to help the war efforts, either infantry, or they have to be a scribe or a healer, but the most epic option is to be a dragon rider. Kind of reminded me of Dauntless from Divergent. So this girl in this story is the daughter of a very famous general, and you know, she kind of has a target on her back from the beginning. She's really small, she's very frail, she has this chronic illness, so it's not a good idea for her to go into the dragon quadrant, but her mother is insisting that's what she must do. She has to maintain the family name, and so she kind of has a target on her back because there's a lot of people that dislike her mother. There's a lot of people that were the children of these sort of rebels that they fought in the war that are now dragon riders that would love to see her dead. There's a lot to it. So she goes and she does this, and there is a hot enemy, there is a love triangle. The hot enemy made the whole story for me. The romance, what aspect of it that there was in the story, thought was really great. The guy was just so hot. I mean, concepts within it, parts of it were good, but overall, and I feel like I've seen nobody else say this because I've seen nothing but 5-star reviews for this book, I felt like I just didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know what the plot of the story was. I didn't know what the point was. The entire ending felt like a complete fever dream, and by the end of it, I was just like, okay, that was fun. I don't plan to continue this series. So next, I had the honor of being one of the very first readers of my good friend Morgan Page's new book, Lovey From Afar. It's coming out July 20th. Oh my gosh, you might have remembered hearing me talk about her book Ruled Out earlier this year. This book, though, okay, look, I loved Ruled Out. I raved about it, y'all heard me, but Lovey From Afar, it's just next level, and Morgan knows that. I've been raving about it to her ever since I read it, but this story is basically about a girl and her fiance's brother. The two of them are stuck on a road trip together, major forced proximity, and over the course of the road trip, lots of things start to come out. There is a lot of history between the two of them, especially one particular night that happened 3 years ago that the two of them really have just never recovered from. They've never discussed. It's always just been kind of like swept under the rug, and since then the two of them just do everything they can to avoid each other, just don't speak to each other, and yeah, there's a lot of bad blood, there's a lot of angst, there's a lot of tension, but now they are stuck in this car by force, and lots of things are gonna come out, lots of things are gonna happen. This book was so good. Obviously, it's like a forbidden romance because it's got the fiance's brother situation, and I don't want you to just think like, oh, it's like a cheating story, whatever. No, there is so much to it. There's so many emotions, so many reasons behind what has happened to the two of them, between the two of them, and when it all plays out, by the end, your heart is just gonna be hurting. You're gonna love it. I actually shed some tears whenever I read this book, and that is very difficult for me. So it comes out at the end of July. ARC signups are out now, so check out Morgan's Instagram, but yeah. Absolutely love this one. Next, I read 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. This book has been on my radar for a while now. I felt like it was something that I was gonna like, but then, as I do, I came across a TikTok teaser that just made me instantly open the book and start reading it. Basically, the teaser was like, and one more thing, stop writing about me. And then it said something along the lines of, he turns around, his voice dropping low, his eyes darkening, and he says, you first. So I was like, okay, sold, I'm gonna read it. It's basically about these two very famous authors. The woman is a famous erotica author, and the man is a famous, I would say kind of like a Taylor Jenkins Reid style author. He just writes these very like emotional books about life that has won him all of these awards. He's very prestigious. And so the two of them have kind of existed in their own spheres. They're both very famous, but what the public doesn't know is that the two of them actually have known each other for a long time. They met whenever they were seniors in high school, and they actually spent 7 days in June together. They had this whirlwind kind of romance. The two of them actually have really, really dark, rough past. They come from very tough family situations, and the two of them kind of found each other when they needed each other most, and they spent these 7 days together. It just like fell epically in love, but then they went their separate ways, and they have not spoken since, and they are now grown adults. The woman actually has a daughter, and they are reuniting because the two of them end up speaking on an author panel together, so they're kind of forced to face one another for the first time in a very long time and kind of confront everything that happened between the two of them. And I just really liked it. It was a story that had time jumps. It jumped between the past and the present, and it kind of slowly built. I just love reading stories about writers and writers writing books and the process of writing, and two writers together. I mean, that's a whole lot of fun. It had some parts that were very emotional, very heavy, but overall it was a really easy read, a really quick read, and good for summer. I overall liked it. And then next I read what is so far my book of the summer. Let me tell you, The Summer We Fell by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I am upset by how criminally underrated Elizabeth O'Rourke is. I read A Deal with the Devil by her earlier this year. Loved it. It is one of the best rom-coms I've ever read, especially workplace romance rom-com. I was obsessed with it. I was just like, oh my god, why are more people like not talking about this author, talking about this book? So good. And then I read this book, and it was somehow so much better. Like, I am simply obsessed with her. I'm planning to read so many more things by her. I just think we need to be talking about her. But basically, this story is about this girl that has grown up in this small sort of beachside town, and she had a really, really rough upbringing, a really rough family situation. She ends up befriending this boy that she goes to high school with that is the son of the small town's pastor. And she comes to a situation with her family where like she needs to get out, she can't live with them anymore, and so this boy's family ends up taking her in. At this point they are dating, and so she kind of finishes out her high school life living with this family. And then, you know, she doesn't really have much in store for her. She doesn't have any of her own money. She's been working as a waitress this whole time, but now it's time for college. High school has ended and her boyfriend has gotten a football scholarship, so he is going off to play football while she is going to stay in this town and, you know, keep waitressing, keep helping out at the church, singing at the church, you know, helping this family out. She is a fantastic singer. She has dreams of being a singer, moving to California, having a whole musical career, but she just knows that's like not in the cards for her. But basically, whenever her boyfriend goes off to college, he ends up befriending this guy that is on the football team with him. And he ends up kind of coming home with him over the summer because he also has a really rough family situation and doesn't really have anything to go home to. So he ends up spending the summers with this family. And this girl and the boyfriend's best friend don't initially get along. They do not get off to a good start. She can just tell he doesn't like her, but slowly over time, like, you start to see that this guy is the only person that really sees her for who she is and sees how much potential she has. You know, she's been living in this very strict religious sort of family situation with this very, you know, law-abiding boyfriend that just thinks that, you know, she's meant to just marry him and sing in the church and pop out kids, and that is her life, and has never even considered what her dreams might be, that if she's, you know, might want more. And she has this like deep feeling of being indebted to this family because they took her in, and she feels like she owes something to them. But you know, her boyfriend's friend is the first one to kind of let her know that she has a life and she should be allowed to live it, and whatever. A lot happens over a long period of time, and lots of tensions rise. But now, present day, the two of them are adults. We know that the girl is now a famous singer and the guy is a famous surfer, and they are reuniting present day because I don't want to say what it is because I feel like it's spoilery, but something has brought them back together in this small town, and they're kind of forced to face their past and what happened between them. It's so good. So it's like an alternating timeline situation, present day, past, present, past. Y'all know I eat that shit up. It's like one of my favorite things in books, and this book just did it so well. And the boyfriend's best friend trope is not something I've really read, like maybe once or twice, but it was just done so well in this book, and I ate it up. I devoured this book. I read it on my Kindle, but I'm like, I need to order the physical copy because I was so obsessed with it. The guy in this book, like, ultimate book boyfriend. Ultimate. He's up there. I've been thinking about him nonstop since I finished. Seriously, read this book before summer is up. So this month I've kind of been on a bit of a thriller kick. It kind of actually started in April and I've just continued it. It's just been fun to kind of switch up reading romance books. It's just, especially on audio, I really like listening to audiobooks of thrillers because it's just, I don't know, they're really kind of like easy to listen to. They keep you intrigued. It's just something fun and different. So I read 3 in the month of May. The first one was I Found You by Lisa Jewell. This is my second Lisa Jewell book, and I think I've just discovered that she's not the thriller author for me. I just think her style of writing them is just not what I'm personally into. She leans more mystery than she does thriller, and just the way that she tells her stories, there's not really like a big plot twist, at least in the 2 of hers that I have read. She kind of just like lays everything out for you, and in the beginning you're very confused. You're like, what is this? This is weird, this is creepy. And then like she kind of slowly just feeds you the information, and then by about, you know, 2/3 of the way through, it's really obvious like what's happened, but then you just kind of see the rest of the story play out. Like that's exactly how both of her books that I've read were for me, and I just prefer a little bit more of a plot twist. I like some shock factor. I like to think one thing is happening, but then it's another thing. I also like, you know, some paranormal-y aspects thrown in there, and she just, I think, is more straight mystery. So she's super popular, but I don't think she's for me. This book specifically was about, there's kind of like multiple stories going on. First of all, there's this woman that is a single mom. She's living kind of next to this beach, and she ends up finding this man that is on the beach that completely has amnesia. He's just sitting out there, doesn't know his name, doesn't know how he got there, and so she ends up kind of taking him in and helping him out to try to figure out who he is. And then you have this other woman who has just moved to this country, and she's only been married to this man for a week, but he just doesn't come home from work one day. And whenever she goes to the police, brings them his passport to try to locate him, it turns out that he doesn't actually exist and he's been using a fake name. And so that story is going on. And then you're also seeing the story in the past of this family that went to spend the summer at this beach, and they kind of encounter this strange boy that takes an interest in their daughter. And that story was like, that aspect of the story was honestly my favorite part. I was really intrigued by it, and each of these stories was really interesting, but you know, they slowly start to come together and you see how they all connect. And yeah, I was hoping for a bit more of a shock factor. I just think it kind of became really obvious what was going on, and then you just kind of saw it play out. But it was still really interesting to listen to. I flew through it really fast because I was really, really intrigued. But yeah, I think that's my last Lisa Jewell book. Unless you guys have like one that was just amazing. I read Then She Was Gone. And she has so many books and some that look interesting to me, but I don't know. I don't think she's for me. But other than that, I also read The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. I have been wanting to read another Simone St. James book for a while now. Last year I read The Sundown Motel and I loved it. I still think that's my favorite thriller I've ever read. And I really think I like Simone St. James's style just so much. Again, like, I've only read 2 of her books, but they were both told in really similar styles with time jumps. You kind of have, you know, a story that takes place in the same setting, but you're seeing it play out over 2 different time periods, and you're seeing both of these people kind of experience the same sort of things, and you're trying to figure out what happened. But this book specifically was about a boarding school that housed girls, and the main character in the story, her sister basically was murdered at the school whenever they were kids, and it was kind of just like an open case for a while. They didn't know what happened, but then eventually this boy who she was dating at the time was, you know, arrested for the murder, but it's just never really sat right with her. It was just very strange. She was like killed and left out in this open field, and she's a journalist, and she's always just wanted to look more into this. She always kind of drives by the school, but now the school has been abandoned for many years, but now somebody has actually bought the school and they're planning to remodel it and reopen it as a boarding school. So she's like, okay, I need to get at the bottom of this. Who's this person reopening it? Also, I just still want to look into what happened to my sister. So that's what's kind of happening present day. But then you're also seeing this storyline in the 50s, I believe, of kind of like this group of girls that all were going to the school together, and you're seeing all of the weird things that they've experienced while they're there. Very like paranormally weird things, lots of creepy things. You're seeing all of their different points of views, and they don't all make it out alive, I'll just say that. So I was just so interested. I couldn't stop listening to this because like I wanted to see each timeline and what was going on, and I didn't like it as much as The Sundown Motel. Like, that book to me just like, oh, it creeped me out. It gave me actual jump scares. This one was still really good, but I didn't like it quite as much. So definitely gonna check out other Simone St. James books, but in general, I just totally recommend her if you're looking for a good thriller. And lastly, in the thriller department, I read The Writing Retreat by Julia Bartz. I just knew when I saw this book last year, when I saw people reading arcs of it, I was like, I need to have it. This cover, the trees, it is very much my vibe, my aesthetic, and I just knew, I just had a feeling I was gonna really like it, and I did. It follows this author that has been struggling for the last year with writer's block because she had this best friend that she met in writing school. They both bonded over the fact that they had the same favorite author, biggest inspiration, and then from there their friendship just grew. They ended up being roommates, they did everything together, but they had this really messy falling out, and they have not spoken in a year, and ever since that happened, she just has found her life kind of turning upside down. Their mutual friends have distanced themselves from her, and she just hasn't been able to write anything. And so now this like opportunity has popped up where that author that she is really inspired by, her favorite author, has, you know, announced that she is doing this competition for people to enter short stories, and whoever writes the best short stories will get to come and stay at her famous mansion for a month-long writing retreat. And this author is, you know, she's really prolific, she's really famous, but she's known for being a recluse. When she's not promoting a book, nobody knows where she is, nobody hears from her, she's never out in the public. So this is like a really big opportunity to get to meet this author that she's really inspired by, and also an opportunity for her to sort of get out of her writer's block. So she is absolutely over the moon when she learns that she has won and that she's going to get to attend this writing retreat. But the kicker of it is that her friend, her ex-best friend, has also won. So they're both going to be staying at this mansion out in the middle of the woods, snowed in the wintertime for a month to do this writing retreat. But quickly after arriving there, she realizes things are not what they seem. Lots of creepy things are happening, and also it's not like a relaxing writing retreat where we're just gonna sit around and talk around the campfire and write leisurely. No, it's a competition. Everybody that is there is going to have to write an entire full-length novel in the month that they are there, and whoever writes the best novel is going to get a publishing deal from this author's publisher. And whoever doesn't write the best, we'll see what happens. This book had me on the edge of my seat. It started out a little bit slow, but necessarily slow. Like, you had to kind of get all the info and figure everything out, and it had to get started. But the second she arrived at the retreat, I was like, oh my God, we are in for a wild ride. So many creepy things were happening. I never knew at any point what was going on, who to trust, ever. And this was so good. It was such a roller coaster. So many twists and turns. Every time I thought like, oh, this is the twist, it was like, no, this is the twist. It was crazy. I really loved it. Like, it might be my second favorite thriller of all time, right behind The Sundown Motel. I haven't read that many thrillers, but this one was really good. I totally recommend it. And then lastly, I DNF'd a book, but I still feel the need to talk about it. I just feel like if I put time into a book and I attempt to read it, but I DNF it, I feel like I still owe it to the world, to you guys, to talk about it. So I tried to read Dirty Letters by Vi Keelan and Penelope Ward. This book has been on my TBR since the first booktube video I ever watched. I think I saw Steph Bower talk about this book, and I was so intrigued by it. It's about like these pen pals, this guy and this girl that were paired up as pen pals when they were back in elementary school, and it reminded me, like, the concept so much of Punk 57, and I adore Punk 57, so I've been so excited to read this book. But it's one of those stories where they're pen pals, but then, you know, they talked for many years, they grow closer, they've grown older, they don't really know much about each other, they exchange photos of each other when they were like kids, but since then they never really have. And then you know, one day randomly, whenever they're, I think like 18-ish, the girl just stops replying to the guy. She just stops writing letters, and the guy is just like distraught over this, heartbroken, keeps sending her letters, and she's not replying. But now, present day, you know, the story starts from the perspective of the girl, and we learn that she went through something kind of traumatic, and it really kind of messed her up. She's been in therapy for it ever since, and that's why she stopped replying to the letters. But now she decides she's gonna start writing him again. But it turns out in the meantime that the guy that she's been writing has actually since become a famous rock star that has a stage name that is different from his actual name, the name that she knows, and she obviously doesn't know it. So yeah, I only got about 30% into this book, so there's not a lot that I can say about it, but I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. A big chunk of the story is just the two of them writing letters to each other, and then the girl kind of wanting to know more about him. So I felt like I knew where it was going, but simply the letters between the two of them were just really cringy. Like they got a little dirty, as to be expected, but it's like the two of them haven't talked in a while, so it's kind of catching up. Like, oh, you know, we talked about things back in the day. I need an update. Did you ever lose your V card? Have you ever done this? What do you like? And it was supposed to be like dirty and sexy, but I just was like cringing. It felt to me like letters exchanged between like 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids that have like never talked about sexy stuff before, and I just couldn't do it. It just felt really Wattpad-y to me. And look, no shade to Wattpad. I love a good Wattpad story, and you know, I think there are some stories that I really like that have an air of Wattpad to them, but it's just Wattpad elevated. This was just like very Wattpad, One Direction fan fiction circa like 2012. I couldn't do it. So I DNF'd it, but I really had high hopes for it, so it made me sad. But yeah, guys, those are the 14-ish books that I read in the month of May. Like I said, it was a roller coaster. Some really great ones, some pretty good ones, some big disappointments, but you know, that's how it goes. But yeah, guys, if you read any of these books, I would love to hear all your thoughts down below. If you've read any other books in May that you absolutely loved, that you feel like I should read, let me know. And let me know what you're most excited to read in June. I know Allie Hazelwood's new book is coming out. Very, very excited for that. I think that was the main one, but yeah, this year is just flying by. It's been a good time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon.